I always say every day you re-meet yourself. That is how you start your day. Because we have internally, our internal GPS is our intuition says one thing, and then our brain says another, and we don't know what is what. And sometimes we stay places longer than we need to because of that, because our mind tells us it's logically makes sense because of the financial reason, or because we may lack confidence within ourselves that we don't think we can do something, versus what happens if I listen to myself and actually follow through on the plan? And what if there was joy as a result of that? And what if I succeeded as a result of that versus I'm going to fail again?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Project Positive Change Soul Series. Michelle, Jeffrey, and I are super excited for our guest today, Connie Canella Aramento. Hello, Connie.
Hi.
So happy to have you here. We have a great show for you today. Project Positive Change Soul Series. We love bringing together visionaries, change agents, and thought leaders who are ready to shine the light of awareness on topics that will create a wave of positive change in the world. A collection of teachings will be shared, sparking conversations that matter, which is at the heart of our Soul series. And like I said, our guest today is Connie Canella Aramento. Just a quick little background of a little bit about who she is. Connie is currently the coordinator of major and admission support services at Worcester Polytechnic Institute. And I think I said that wrong. Worcester Polytechnic Institute in Worcester, Massachusetts, and the CEO and founder of Soul Wellness LLC, focused in personal and professional development, bridging the gap between leadership and wellness. Connie believes that we all have a mission, and she helps people to see, believe, love, and begin walking their path towards achieving it by accepting, leveraging, and communicating who you are in your career and life. Connie has a unique way in helping people resync at the core towards their mission and offers intuitive oracle readings, coaching, retreats, workshops, and the Soul Sync Wellness Core Workbook as pathways to do so. Collectively, she has 15 years in higher education, has coached more than 2,000 people, spoken at expos, conferences, and teaches a course called Mapping Your Mission. Ooh, I love the sound of that, Connie. So interesting. Welcome, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be part of this today and in conversation with all of you. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Why don't you give us, I know I read your bio,
Yeah.
but give us a little background about you and how this all came into being.
Absolutely. So it's quite the journey, quite the path. We all have our own journeys. And, for me, mine has been one of being born and raised in Buffalo, New York, from immigrant parents and raised as a first generation human, being the first in my family to go to college and to venture off and say that I want to discover myself. So it all started there with a whole bunch of other stuff in between. But ultimately, I made the choice in the beginning of my career in higher education to commit to a couple of things. And one was my own wellness. The other was my leadership, and to find myself ultimately and to carve my own path. So, I was able to do that early on in my career. I found that through higher education. And then I also found that through my work in really integrative nutrition coaching, which introduced me to the whole person and holistic perspective. And then really the map was set for me from there to really discover all of these pieces within me. I would say the biggest pieces to my journey to getting to this point were after I had my children and getting sick. And really what the biggest part for me was discovering that the person who I was as a child, as an adult, that I was basically trying to be somebody else other than who I already was, and that I needed to accept who that person was. And whether it was anxiety or whether it was not feeling good enough or not having confidence or whatever it may be, or letting others decide for me, I had to really come face to face for that. So about it was about 4 years ago or so, I actually had a really difficult time, and that I actually had to take some time away from work to take care of myself. And through that, I found really my spirituality, the mindfulness and the meditation. And I started asking myself some really deep questions. That's actually when I developed my Soul Sync Core workbook, when I wasn't feeling well, because it was questions that I had to ask myself in order to really figure out how I got in this place. And as a result of that, I determined that the work that I was doing in higher education, I had done it already. I needed to move on to a different path. I needed to figure out where I wanted to go. And I was stopped, in those tracks, really, to figure that out.
Connie, I love your story, but what really stands out for me is that it's so the hero's journey. You've always been on this path, but you keep recognizing and moving towards it. And then, if I heard you right, it was like really one of the obstacles was you're already on that journey of being a coach and being a teacher, and always passionate about helping other people take their life to the next level. But then you got into a even more deeper, meaningful, was when you had your own obstacles show up for you, and that being your health and being a parent at the same time. I love this, because now you're at this end of that hero's journey, because you're sharing all of this collective wisdom with everyone, and that's where Soul Synchro Workbook has shown up.
Absolutely.
You have been, sorry, I just want to, you've been a member of PPC, Project Positive Change, from the very beginning, and we're just seeing you or just finding you. So I want to say welcome to coming out and shining your light today, and letting us see who this Connie is in the background. I'm super excited. I'm super excited to hear about mapping your mission, just how powerful that information that you've come to know on a soul sense, not on that higher education where I studied this, but through your illness, stepping into, I know this. That's the wisdom, the knowing, not the studying of it.
Yes. So I can share a little bit about that. It's interesting. I remember sitting in my job. I had my son. I remember sitting after I had my son. He's 5 now, so we're talking 5 years ago. I remember sitting in my office, and I asked I didn't get a promotion that I thought I was going to get. I was at my lowest of lowest points. That's when my physical illness started to really tap into my body to tell me these signs of like, hey, you're not listening to yourself. You're being suffocated because you're not listening to where you really can make a difference and where you want to go, and what I ultimately saw as my own happiness. And so unfortunately for me, which I say fortunately, because if it wasn't for that experience, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to awaken soulfully within me to ask myself these deep questions, to say, okay, what am I capable of? What are my deepest desires? What am I hiding through my anxiety? What am I not communicating? I ended up with a thyroid issue, which clearly from a throat chakra, standpoint, I wasn't using my voice. I was hidden, and so for me, it was about how do I awaken these pieces and my life purpose points within me so that I can actually say, hey, this is me. This is what I'm here to do. And here's how I do it. And I'll tell you, being in higher education, it's interesting, right? Because you think of it from an intellectual standpoint, but I really started to think about how many interactions that I had with people every day, that then I started to talk to people who else had anxiety, who else had physical pain, who else had all of these migraines or headaches. I was fortunate enough, to find good experiences and rewire my brain and doing some other exercises to help figure out how to sort through that. Now I get to help others do that because I found that I had to take the long journey. And so why not help others figure this stuff out so they don't have to take a long journey. There's a shorter process, and I have figured out, I believe from my experience, the strategy and ways to walk people through step by step and how to do that. So it's not as painful, as I felt like I had to go through. But as a life investigator, I feel like that this is my design. And so, I did a lot of work with human design too, and actually with the fellow PPC member, Asha Ramakrishna, and that really opened up my eyes, that I'm really here to advise and guide others. And as soon as I did that and learned about that, I had this aha moment of, what am I doing? And it's time for me to really get clear on who I am and not let other people make decisions for me. And how can I start navigating my soul's map and really share that with others?
I love that, Connie. And I love that you call yourself a life investigator. I love it because it puts you in that seat of just curiosity. So we get out of judgment and we can just get curious at like, what's the lesson here? What's showing up? And I find it really interesting that when you didn't get the promotion, it was like after that some of the health issues started coming up. And do you think that if we were to just kind of question why things happen and what is showing up that could support us, do you think that could shorten or give us kind of like a learning curve where maybe you could shorten the path to getting to where you want to be?
Absolutely. I think the first thing first is that we're so powerful, first of all. We are powerful humans. And that what I have seen is that we choose not to listen, either because we don't have the awareness level to do that, or because we are just avoiding it completely. And so first step that I do when I work with, even from all the way from college to, it doesn't matter, every phase of your life, that's one of the first things that I'm always asking myself. And I'm also asking others is, is this something that you're experiencing? How can you connect to it? How can you open yourself up to whatever that is? If we do that, the path then starts to slowly open up and we can invite whatever is there. But we're scared to do that because we don't know what exists underneath all of that. If we choose the path of figuring it out in that way, I personally have experienced this. If I could go back, I'd probably do it earlier, but teaching others to do this early on and listening to what's going on and finding that voice within and talking to it, right? Really asking clear questions of what is going on here? What is this feeling? What is this thought? Do they connect? Are they, very different? Do I believe them? Do I not believe them? How are they influencing my life? How are others influencing my life versus my voice? I have an exercise in my Soul Sync Core workbook that kind of walks you through perspectives. And how are you feeling on a perspective in comparison to what others are saying outside of you, and which is your voice and which is your gut and which is, society expectations, right? And how might we connect to those feelings, emotions, within us. And it's exercises like that that I believe that really help us gain clarity, because sometimes we just don't know how to figure it out. We don't know how to do that. So there's two aspects of that, of like, how do we do that? And then, avoiding it.
So Connie, so what you're saying is really all would fall under the umbrella of, like, you teach at its core, there's a lot of self-inquiry. Rather than looking to others to validate us or looking to others to have our answers, which is all part of our human condition. Like, we were taught these habits, some more than others, but for sure, some of us our voices were taken from us, or we at early ages stepped into not trusting ourselves for something. So how much of that helps us go back to rewriting that story or letting go of that story so that we can move more towards a future focus rather than the past conditioning?
Sure. So I always say every day you re-meet yourself. That is how you start your day.
What was that?
Every day you re-meet yourself. You re-meet yourself. It's a new day. And I use that mentality with myself because I found myself you know, we think about depression or anxiety or other mental health issues, right? You know, anxiety so far in the future, depression so far in the past that we're stuck in between, right? And this dynamic of how can we work with that? For me, when I look at things this way. You know, where have I been? Where am I? And as a result of knowing this piece of information, where might I go now? And in combination with the re-meeting yourself every day and being able to say to yourself, who am I today? Not the person who I was 10 years ago. You know, that person who I want to lose 10 pounds and geez, I loved how I looked when I was 25, or that wrinkle, whatever that is, right? Or I was making big bucks then and now, geez, I have a family and I can't figure it out. I can't balance it all, right? You know, if we can just meet and greet ourselves at that current moment, wherever we are, and re-meet ourselves as if it is brand new, there's power in that. Because we spend so much, think about it, right? We spend so much time in either what was a memory, an experience that we've had that was so good that it's embedded in our system, versus creating and looking at opportunity to reinvent ourselves or to re-meet ourselves from who is there. You know, so I had a conversation with someone last week. She had, unfortunately, kidney cancer. And, you know, she started crying in our conversation. And she's a woman in her 50s. And she came to me to talk about the fact that, you know, she's having a hard time accepting herself with where she is because she doesn't have the energy that she had. And I looked at her and I said, so it's time for you to say hello to whoever's here and now. Who is she? Who's here? How can you honor her? How can you embrace her? How can you love her just as she is, because she's here, you know, and the woman that, you know, she wants to go back. And I said, but, you know, you've experienced that. It's a lesson that's completed for you for whatever reason on this planet, on this earth, as being human. And this is your new phase. This is your new contract, your new story, whatever it is that you're looking that is next on your path. You know, we really can find joy, I think, within ourselves when we do that.
I love that so much. Just the whole concept of re-meeting yourself. I've never heard it put that way. And I just really love it. And even adopting a practice, asking yourself when you wake up, who am I today?
Yeah.
You know, focusing on like right now, because I know I feel like even myself, and I know a lot of others, we look to the past so much, and we feel, I know maybe that we need permission to know that the lesson is over and that you have permission to move forward. Maybe that's the missing piece.
And don't we, sometimes when we look to the past, the issue is that we tend to romanticize, depending on what it is we're looking at the past, we kind of brush over the fact that like, oh, if I could only go back to when I was making this amount of money and I was living in this big home, that we forget the relationship that had to end as a result of that past, that we kind of just romanticized the good parts, but we didn't look at like the personal torment that you might have been in during that time, rather, and seeing it for what it was, rather than just looking back at, well, my bank account was bigger, or I drove a fancier car, or something, that whole area that needed to change because you were ready to change, but we have to take all of it with it. And it has nothing to do with really, in the bigger picture, what we're capable of creating right now. We're so much more than we could have in the past because of the experience that we had.
And I think also what happens, and I love what you said, I think also what happens is we think as if we cannot create experiences that may give us similar feelings again. And so it's as if we've met that, we have this past, but as if that's it, it'll never happen again. And I know for myself, it was like, well, maybe I'm not meant to run my business, right? Maybe I'm supposed to do this job thing that I can't stand, but for whatever reason keeps giving. I don't get it, but I'm still here. And in my soul, though, there's a craving and deeper desire for me to really shine as me, okay, which is exactly where I am at this point. It's like, I love what I do in terms of working with students, but I am ready, you know, to fully what I want and came here to do, which is, and what's interesting is that as soon as I decided, and this has been one of my mantras, is that I always say I live life in color, and that, you know, when you decide, you follow through, okay? And so decide and follow through, decide and follow through, repeat, rinse and repeat. This is kind of my thing lately, is that I made a decision and now I'm going to follow it through. And I think what happens is that even when because we have internally, our internal GPS is, you know, it's very interesting, because what happens is our intuition says one thing, and then our brain says another, and we don't know what is what, right? So part of this is understanding what the difference is between our intuition and what the difference is between what our head is telling us, and then the combination of what happens when these two meet together. And so, you know, I think for me, it took a while to actually be clear and get clarity for me of, okay, does this feel right? You know, and sometimes we stay places longer than we need to because of that, because our mind tells us it's logically makes sense because of the financial reason, or because, you know, we may lack confidence within ourselves that we don't think we can do something, versus what happens if I listen to myself and actually follow through on the plan. And what if there was joy as a result of that? And what if I succeeded as a result of that, versus I'm going to fail again? Because I will share this too, is, you know, back when I wasn't feeling well, one of the things that I was doing is I was a director at the time, and I was running my business at the same time. And I was trying to do these things, right? I had three things, right? I had my kids, I was trying to be a wife, I was trying to run a business and grow it, and I was trying to be a director. Well, that didn't work out very well for me. And so as a result of that, I learned that lesson, and I said, okay. But I remember people telling me, you know, well, you just got to go part-time. Well, I couldn't, because I was people pleasing, and I wasn't listening to myself. I was pleasing other people and saying, well, they told me that I should probably be here. And so let me suffer, right? Let me suffer. So I had to go through that process, so then I could really say and realize, oh, that's me. That's me not listening to my voice. That's me letting other people decide for me. You know, and that was part of my journey internally. And so, you know, it showed up in other ways, physical pain, right? So our bodies react to emotions that are suppressed within our bodies. And so they talk to us. I always say, you know, think about all those people that walk around every day in pain. They don't even realize, you know, that there are solutions to feel better. We just have to be ready, willing, and open to the journey.
Yeah, so paying attention to what's going on in your body, any kind of physical pain, emotional pain. I do have one question, because I love that you said this when you said we have that conversation, maybe it's not meant to be. I hear that a lot. And would you say that's the head talking or the heart talking? And what we can do with that? Maybe it's not meant to be conversation.
So I think it's both. I think that that to me is the conflict within the self. And so that's where I usually ask, at least for me, I usually say, you know, let's say that thought came of, you know, it's not meant to be, right? Maybe it's not meant to be. Then what I do is I usually put my hands on my heart, and I usually sit with that, and I say, okay, it's not meant to be. And I see what happens in my physical body. So if I start to tighten up, then I know I have to reconsider that thought. If my body completely relaxes and loosens, then I know that that's my intuition and that I have to go with that. So part of that is I also had to learn my intuitive yes and my intuitive no. And one of the ways that I did that was, and this is a very simple exercise that people can do, is I would say, it's cold outside, or this is, I mean, it can be the simplest thing, right? And somebody's sitting there and saying, okay, or I feel good, or I feel bad, right? Very simple kind of things. And then being able to close your eyes, take a couple of deep breaths in, and sit with that. And then document and write down what comes up, right? And some people feel physical symptoms, some people feel nothing, some people have emotional reactions. And then you play with that, and you play with that with a couple of different things to see what's common. Because I think part of that is teaching people how to figure out what your intuition is telling you, what your no is and what your yes is, so that you can start to pay attention. You know, I know that when I do oracle readings, and if people watch me, it's actually pretty comical, because what happens with me is I'll hold something. If I have a deck of cards, you know, my deck of cards, and my neck will start to move, because my body is reacting to whatever energy I have within me based on whatever question I'm asking. That's how I perceive information. So for you to, you know, for you, Nikki, it would be different. For you, Michelle, it would be different. But I think it's teaching people that no one way to do it is for everybody, and that you have to begin to commit to give yourself permission to explore who you are, and starting with that process.
And so, Connie, I love this intuitive yes or no. Is the other, like, to me, is that whenever I'm pretty powerful intuitively, but my intuition really got stronger hearing the yes or the no, the more I began to become really willing to tell myself the truth about something. Like that muscle that I developed about the truth. And then my intuition kind of came like right behind it, going, right? Yeah. So willing to tell myself the truth became my yes or no. It's like, whether it's like, stop candy coating it. Like, it's just, here's the truth without a judgment. And then the intuition kind of helped for my yes or no.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think as I've seen my muscle open up as well, I think, and for me, I started to see things, you know, I started to, whether it was dreams or, you know, and, you know, then I began to start to realize, the thing that I didn't think I was denying my whole life, that what if I actually acknowledged and accepted that this was a piece that was part of me? And 100% I can definitely agree with you that the more that I started to say that yes to the things that connected within me and my soul map, and I like to say kind of our whole purpose within us is, I like to say that we have dots in our whole bodies. I explain this to my students all the time. There's dots in our bodies that essentially are looking to connect themselves. And as when you keep following your intuition and your path, each one gets revealed, and it opens up as this flower that is willing to meet you. And then you have these synchronicities, and then you manifest experiences, and then your intuition opens up. And the more that you do that, it just continues to keep going and going, going, going. And then you realize that you have power within you, and that you didn't realize that you had. You know, so I 100%, you know, agree with what you're saying, and how that I've seen it happen for myself. And I think for me too, you know, being born and raised in a Greek world, I had to hide myself. You know, I had to be secret. And it's been an interesting journey for me to step out and share my gifts and how I help people without fear of judgment. And so that has been a very interesting journey for me. And I'm grateful that I am okay with that, and that I can do that, share that, and encourage others to do the same, because, you know, it's really about acknowledging who you are and loving yourself as you are and trusting that. So I totally agree.
And so when you talk about mapping our mission, that's really about what you're saying is connecting our dots to discover who we truly are. And then when we discover that, then we're ready to share that with the world. And hopefully by that time, we no longer need to have everyone's outside approval. That's the whole inside knowing. and everything, the mapping our mission is connecting our own individual journey. Is that, am I saying that, summarizing that?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both. So part of it is the discovery. So part of it is that we have to do all of this discovery. And primarily a lot of clients that I work with, there's a couple reasons why we end up connecting. And the first reason is really connecting to emotions and finding your voice. The second is really connected to kind of career in terms of if you're connecting with me, you're probably going to move up or you're going to move out of your industry, whatever that is. And, you know, I joke, every time I do a vision board party, and I don't know what it is, but I tell them there's always a theme whenever I have one. And most of the time it's usually career related, and by the next year they've all changed jobs. And I said, so if you don't want to come and you don't want that to happen, then you might not want to do that. But so part of this is this discovery, right? So we have to gain clarity. So that's where a lot of the inquiry, the self-inquiry kind of comes into play. The other is looking at what you're good at, right? So I do ask people to kind of look at what their strengths are, what their passions are, what their hobbies are, what their interests are, what your belief systems are, what your values are, what might you feel are the messages that you have lived by your whole life that you either agree or don't agree with. What do you feel is blocking you from your current potential? So we really kind of go through this whole entire discovery phase. And then it's developing kind of from that, having this level of awareness of, okay, what is your mission? What are you here to do? What is that for you? And how have you come to learn that for yourself based on the way you were raised, what experiences you've had, good, bad, or indifferent? They're all part of our journey and part of those dots. And then we look at all that and we map it out. And we look at how they're all connected. We look at that, how it's connected to, again, where you've been, where you are, and then we look at where you want to go based on that. And then we also revisit again, you know, what holds you back from that, right? What is stopping you fully from that? And some of that is energy work, right? Some of that is really being able to connect within our chakras and figure out where our blockages are. Some of that is, you know, inner child work. Some of that could be mirror work. I mean, it could be a variety of tools and ways in which that we do those kinds of things. But my path or my goal when I'm working with people is about your own self-discovery. I'm not a teller, I'm an asker. And so really it's the opportunity that I'm asking you questions for you to have your aha moments and connect your dots based on the questions that I'm asking you. Obviously, if we get to a point, there's a little stuck, you know, there are intuitive messages that I may have to convey, you know, based on that. But ultimately, it really then kind of comes together, I think, nicely in terms of how people then map out where they want to go. And so supporting them, that whatever that process is something that I do.
I love that. And I think what I'm hearing is that everything is within you.
You got
it's
it.
really all inside, and you're really just helping to guide your people into uncovering that, unearthing it.
We have everything that we need. It's interesting. I did about a 3-4 month rewiring of my brain with Dr. Victor Pedro in Rhode Island. And he's a holistic integrative doctor. And because I was having extensive migraines and issues that were coming up for me, it was really interesting to go through the experience of then being able from that to understand what was different in terms of my brain, in terms of the ideas that were going on in my mind versus the reality, and to get to that place. Now, we all don't need to rewire our brains or, you know, do Dr. Dispenza's work, but I love him. But there are opportunities for us and to find what we need. And it starts with, right, we can't go out and get what we want until we find what is within us. So you are your compass, you are your GPS. We have what we need. We may think that we don't, and I think that that's where illness sometimes comes from. So we have to keep talking, and that's why I keep saying the re-meeting ourselves, or we have to keep talking to ourselves daily, so that way we can gain clarity. And for some of us, it might be I need 15 minutes of self-writing each day. For some of us, it may mean I need to go physically work out. For others, it may mean I need to go ask for help or get help, right? So the outcome or the to-do based on that, or, you know, some of us may need to, you know, integrate essential oils or crystals into the work that we're doing, right? So it all depends on who we are, but it starts with ourselves. Absolutely.
Fabulous. I love your message.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I really do. And oh, Michelle, did you want to say something?
Well, I just wanted to ask Connie, because I think you bring so much, because we're all in this program, Project Positive Change, because we do see that potential for realizing our dreams and everything. But how do people get in touch with you? How do they work with you? How do they step into mapping their mission with you? Or you also have a book that you have, or a workbook that you put together. So if you could share, where does someone even start?
Absolutely. So first, I would love to invite you to follow me on Instagram at Connie Canella, and my social media platforms, which Soul Sync Wellness on Facebook. I do weekly readings on my Facebook page, and those are free for the first 10. So that's one way to start to engage and interact with a community that I love dearly. And the second way, obviously, is Soul Sync Wellness, and going to my website, and feel free to, you can email me through there, send me an email at Connie@soulsyncwellness.com. But I love to gift you all for listening to this, my Soul Sync Core workbook, because I firmly believe that we have to ask ourselves these great questions. And, you know, yeah, it's work. Not gonna lie, it's work. But we have to commit to that if we want to fully live in joy. And so I gifting you my 40-page workbook, and would love to have a conversation with you afterwards about how it's inspired you, how it's helped you, and how I might be able to help you when it comes to that. And you can always reach me by email, as I mentioned before.
Wow, that's very generous. That workbook looks awesome. I want a copy.
I will send you one.
Thank you so much. This has been so great. I just love connecting with like-minded people. You've got so many beautiful takeaways. And the biggest one that for me was just re-meeting yourself each day. And it almost gives you permission to show a little grace, to forgive yourself, and that you get to start again right where you are and just move forward. So that was beautiful.
That's great. The power of, you know, I've had a tough time in trying to practice the power of presence, and learning how to do that every day and be still and sit in whatever is here has been so meaningful for me. And I think finding my voice again, and that it was dormant, I think is something that has really empowered me to believe in the fact that I am here to be a charismatic leader, or to support people and help people along the way, and advise and guide in the way that I'm feeling guided to and directed. And I know there's more to come, and I'm open to those opportunities, and know that it's part of my pathway and journey. You know, I talk a lot about my mantras. I said, you know, decide and follow through, and live my life in color. I always talk about, you know, my voice is my sacred power. Miracles come as I believe in them. And, you know, loving myself as whoever I am here and now, even though, you know, I might not be losing the weight that I put on, but hey, you know, I've got to love myself anyways, right? Because that's what it's all about. And so I've really honored those mantras and sticking to them and believing in them. And I really just love when people learn and grow and find what is within them. I think there's such beauty in that, and continuing to do that and connecting. I look forward to that. And I did forget to mention, I do have an event on November 23rd. If you are in Worcester, Massachusetts, I am running an event called Rock Your Mission, and I'd love to have you join me. Information, actually, you get some sneak peek information here because it hasn't gone live just yet. But if you'd like more information on tickets and how to spend a whole day with me and a bunch of other amazing women who are ready to rock their mission, we can do it together here in Worcester on the 23rd of November. So you can email me at Connie@soulsyncwellness.com too.
Awesome. Yes, and we will place all the links with this video so people can find you on Instagram and your website and email you and just take advantage of all that you have to offer.
Thank you. I appreciate all of it.
Connie,
It's so great.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you, Connie. And I just want to tell you another thing that I love is the name Soul Sync Wellness, just how connected our wellness is to our ability to be connected to our spirit and our soul. I just love the title and all that you're encapsulated in the work that you do. So thank you so much for today. It's been a true treat to just, I could talk forever. I would love to. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I could too. We could do this all the time.
Exactly. All right, ladies, this has been really awesome. And thank you everybody for tuning in to Project Positive Change Soul series. Until next time.